Before we get to our episode of Magic in the Room, I want to invite you to take our new online course called Getting It Done, Mastering the Art of Productivity. This self-paced online course will help you get more done in less time by just simply understanding the science of productivity. Check out the course at purposeandperformancegroup.com/online learning or find the link in the show notes. I hope you learn a lot from today's episode of Magic in the Room.
Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Welcome to Magic in the Room. I am Luke Freeman.
I'm Chris Province, and today we are joined by a very special guest. It is Mr. Brian Gooden. Hello, good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and put it out there. You and I have known each other for a while now.
Yep.
I'm guessing in the neighborhood of 7 years, 8 years, something
Yep.
around there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have some work history together. I've always admired your work as a leader. But let's just kind of dig in. Today we're going to talk about community. We're going to talk about this idea of what is a warrior, what is an elder, and how do we navigate our community space with those roles or with those titles. So we're going to really explore some background, some history, and what it's like to be a native leader in today's business environment. But just to let all the folks know listening, give us a little bit of background on you.
Okay, sure. Just to kind of start where I'm at professionally, I'm the general manager of Seven Clans Paradise Casino in Red Rock, Oklahoma. Long story short, over the past 17 years or so, I've just worked my way up through the ladder. Started off as a cook many, many years ago, and worked through several positions, several departments. And that's, just tried to do my best and learned at every position, and combining that with some schooling and all this other stuff and education and training and relationships.
Right.
Right. I landed where I'm at the moment for the past 6-7 years, something like that. So take great honor in that position. Since I've grown through this other cycle of positions, I've always said, here's what I'm going to do, or here's what I'm not going to do if I ever have that position. Right. A lot of it was, here's what I'm not going to do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, that's easier. That's how I learn better, is what not to do.
Right.
And that, I'm sure that says something about me, but, so yeah, that's where we did. Right now I have a couple of side businesses I do too. Just, work on some Amazon, sell some things on Amazon. Also have another little Etsy shop where I sell Native American jewelry,
Nice.
handmade and everything. So,
Yeah. And so, what tribe are you a member of?
Oto, Missouri.
Right.
Oto, Missouri tribe.
So, you are employed by the tribe you are a member of.
Correct. Yep.
So that's some interesting dynamic, right?
It is. It is.
How many members in the tribe?
I think we're probably around 3,500-ish, give or take a few.
3,500. And about how many businesses does the tribe have?
Good question. Several, I would say probably about 7 to 10 smaller businesses.
Like a credit union,
Got
cattle
a credit
ranch.
union, yep. Cattle ranch, credit union, several casinos, hotels, yep,
gas stations,
yep, C-stores. I think we're probably getting into a few other little businesses I probably can't speak on right now, but exciting,
Right.
So yeah, it's good stuff. The tribe's coming a long ways, and we had a small conversation earlier, and 20 years ago, none of this was even here for us. So we've came a long way as a tribe. We were even much smaller, probably I think maybe at 1,200 or so, and we changed the blood quantum and everything. So yeah, we're bigger and we have more resources now.
It's awesome.
Yep.
And so, with 7 to 10 businesses that your particular tribe operates. Most of the tribes here in Oklahoma are executing some sort of diversification initiative, whether they're operating distribution centers or refabricating return materials or getting into defense and security contracting. There's just a lot of economic activity in rural Oklahoma. But let's speak to, like, when the tribe is successful, like, where does the money go?
Ultimately, it all goes back to the community. A lot of it goes back to social services, I would say.
In the form of programs,
Programs, right? Yep, in the form of programs at the tribal government. And
typically that'll be?
You got a lot of, for one, education. Mm-hmm. So, when every time a tribe, for some of the listeners that may not know, every time the tribe that has a casino operation, they have what they call a revenue allocation plan, where certain percentages of the revenue are earmarked to go to certain programs. I can't remember ours off the top of my head, but I know a big one is education, higher education especially. And, like I said, 20 years ago when I started my higher education journey, there wasn't much resources there. But now there's a lot. And so it's more of our younger and whoever, really, tribal members that want to go to that level have that opportunity now. And I think that's tremendous. The other part is social services, healthcare, things like that, extraordinary assistance programs to, just for things that happen, Murphy's Law, something's always going to go wrong, right? So whether it's some unexpected bills or medical bills or something like that, there is actually money there for the tribal members to apply for and get, which is awesome. Yeah,
we've got Agency on Aging, which is meal programming for
citizens,
elders, right? Just food provisions, so many services now available in rural markets that were typically only available in metro service areas where you had a lot of nonprofit activity. So I think it feels like things are becoming more equitable, if I can use that word. So maybe there's a little less gap between how someone born in rural Oklahoma is resourced compared to someone born in Midtown Tulsa. So, good stuff. I just thought that was good for context, this idea of the types of businesses a tribe might run. But let's kind of, take us through your journey. And I don't know, what's your read on navigating this space of working for not just a tribe, but the tribe you're a member of, and how that positions against maybe working for any other company on planet Earth?
Got it. Yeah. So recently I've come to understand it, in the past couple of years, is essentially me as a general manager. I'm a general manager of a big family business. When I say big family, 3,500 members. And ultimately, I answer to them, right? At the end of the day, I have to be competent enough to help that operation be profitable so that we can have revenue, so that we can distribute it to all those programs and things we just talked about. So not only that, my immediate family as well, right? My daughter, who's a tribal member, my mother, my sisters, my nieces, my nephews, they're all my actual, real family is part of this extended family. So I answer to them as well. I answer to tribal members that work on that floor, so to speak, that work for me. I actually work for them, right? I answer to them. So it's actually a pretty unique situation. I feel that as if I worked for, in corporate America somewhere, I wouldn't have that direct responsibility as much.
Yeah, the interdependencies aren't quite as rich, right?
Yep.
And it is a different dynamic when we're leading in the tribal enterprise space, because everyone has a vote, and administrations turn over, and if we do our jobs really well, like we transcend administrative turnover.
Yeah.
As enterprise leaders. So, but that dynamic is really interesting. And so walk me through kind of what's your take on your responsibility to that community? Like, how do you, what are the things you do to steward that?
My responsibility to community is, it's, as my experience changes throughout time, so has I think my view of my responsibilities has changed as well. It's kind of fluid, and that's just me growing as a person and as a leader. And kind of like we're talking about as a warrior, what does that mean in this position? And job creation is one that stands out to me a lot. Opportunity, right? When 20 years ago or whatever, I didn't have much resources, but there was one business there, and it was a casino, and it was 6 miles away. I didn't have a car, so I had to ride my bike, right? Or hitch a ride, whatever it was. But there was something there that provided income, and that's all I was trying to get, right? I'm just trying to help my family pay the bills. I'm not trying to be some CEO or GM. I'm trying to keep the lights on and the water running, food on the table, right? So me never trying to forget where I came from, realizing that in rural Oklahoma, and we're like Red Rock, it's essentially in the middle of nowhere, right? There's not much resources there, but there's that casino. So I try to give everyone a chance. And if I got to give them 100 chances, I'm going to do that. It might be painful for the both of us, but I'm going to try to exhaust those chances until, okay, well, maybe you're just not ready to work in this business. And maybe there's another tribal business, because now there is a little bit more. There are more businesses, so there are more opportunities. But I think that's a big part of mine, because that's the route I went through.
Sure.
Right.
Well, and I think there's this idea that when you really care about someone, you're there to communicate 100 times, and you still care enough to communicate the 101st, and you still care enough to communicate the 102nd, because we're not dealing with the Amazon, Googles, and Microsofts of the world, right? When you're in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, you're going to run out of people. So you do have the same candidate pool for years and years and years and years. So explain that dynamic to me. Tell me about the person that turned it around the 6th time or the 8th time or the 9th time, because we all know that that's a very difficult thing.
It is.
But I do know that those stories exist, and that's why we keep putting
Well, you're looking at them. One for one.
Okay, so how many times did you get shit canned before you actually hung on?
I've got shit canned 2 or 3 times in my lifetime through a casino. So when I tell you I went through this process, it's not like it was definitely complex. I remember one time I got fired, and I was like, "You're not firing me. No, you can't fire me." Right? So I had that attitude, right? Entitlement. I've been there. Trust me. So I get it. I think that entitlement is a big issue in Indian country, but I've been there, so I understand it. It doesn't need to be an issue, though. It can be changed. But kind of going back to what we were talking about, giving people opportunities and speaking to them that 102nd time, because when I get off work, I got to go see their aunt or their mom or their dad when I get gas, or I got to see them, right? I got to be able to hold my head up high to know that I did everything that I could do to keep them employed so that they can provide for their family. Because if I can't, then shame on me, right? That's the obligation or responsibility I have for them. There's been a lot of times it's worked out. There's been a lot. Not one really stands out at the moment, because there's There's several.
There is a lot of them.
There is.
I think it happens more than what most people would think, because you'll go, you'll hire someone, they'll be terminated. 6 months later, they're eligible for rehire.
Right.
So you bring them back on, then they turn over really quick that time.
Yeah.
And then you don't see them for 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden they come back and they're like, I really messed up by not sticking around where there was some leadership and upward mobility.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to do this thing this time.
Yeah.
And just maturity and growing up, and and I think that's one of the more compassionate things about those work systems is that I was not the person at 24 that I was at 22, and I'm sure wasn't the same person at 30 that I was at 24. So to continue to grow and evolve people, I think has a lot of merit.
Yeah, I do have one example right now that currently works at a casino in she's a young lady, and she worked in a players club, and was a complete nightmare, right? Anything you could think of as far as rumors and gossip, it was all there, right? And she was always part of it. And then I think she quit because I think she went off to school or something. Well, a couple of years she comes back, and I told everyone, do not. I didn't even know she applied. So, but she got through the cracks because I was like, I really don't want this person to ever work here again, right? I just don't. I don't want to deal with this person. And long story short, slipped through the cracks in HR. And she shows up to work. Like, who hired her? What happened? At least tell me, right? No one told me. But she's a completely different person now, and she's one of our best workers. And I don't know what changed with her. And I'll tell her just like I'm telling you. I think I have. I didn't really want you to work with you again. But something changed, and she grew in a couple of years, and she's still working with us now. She does a great job.
Yeah. And I think that's something that is unique about tribal enterprise, and this is when I was working for my tribe. It's what I always felt, that I had full authority to care about the people that I was charged to lead, and I was trusted to do that in whatever way I deemed of value. Within some sort of reason. But if I wanted to do something to engage and inspire and motivate, and there was no one that was going to say, no, you can't do succession planning with every person at the property. No one was going to tell me not to. Yeah. You can't meet with everyone, once a month. No, it was all that stuff that was encouraged. It's we want you to connect. We want you to bond, this community together.
Right.
And when we started getting really intentional about those practices, it was crazy what happened to the business. It was really, the stronger the community became, the more revenue these service businesses were producing. And it just starts with this idea, though, that we value the dollars we can outlay to hire people. It's not how much do I have to pay you, it's how much can I pay you, and how many people can I hire. Never an idea of how many people do I have to have.
Right.
Opposite. How much money can I deploy?
Yep.
How many jobs can I create? Because anytime we can provide meaningful employment, we give somebody a career path, we give them upward mobility, we give them for generations they can learn to provide for their family. They can model the way for people that follow them. And that freedom to care took so much pressure off the system that allowed the community to thrive. And that's really where we started striking on, okay, there's something to this. Now let's get to the science behind it. And then we started studying, why does it work this way? Why is it that if I don't shove the spreadsheet down someone's throat, the property makes more money? Like, we are much more profitable in community with one another in service environments than we are trying to transact every, KPI, operational measurement, et cetera. Yes, we have to have those things, but KPIs in the community-based, work world, those are literally outcomes. Like, we do not get that result because all we do is talk about that. We have conversations set up to say, hey, it's really important that we perform in this area. Like, so because we care about it, we do it.
Right.
And this end result, the thing that's on the scorecard, is just an outcome. We don't have to beat it into people's head. And that's where I say there's so much difference in the environment where I've got to walk around and say, change that light bulb, change this light bulb, change that light bulb, versus the environment where all the lights are always on.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we're not looking for broken things. We just know that all the lights have to be working at all the time. So it's this idea, the more freedom a leader has to care about the community they're charged with supporting, the better the performance will be, the better the outcomes will be for that team.
Yep.
And that's what makes work in the tribal space so unique. And I will say, like, in this space, like, you get it or you don't. You get that concept or you don't.
Yeah.
I remember a CFO at one of the larger commercial gaming organizations said, well, the tribes would just have so many more resources if they wouldn't operate their properties like a bunch of socialists.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I thought, bro, like, this whole idea of ownership really wasn't a thing for us all that long ago. Like, up until the time of contact, we didn't know you could own land.
Yeah.
Like, and I think a lot of us still don't believe that.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that we can own something that does not belong to us, like, it's just so foreign, and it feels unnatural.
Right.
Right. But so many of the things in our spiritual teachings are about sharing and community, and whether it's how we harvest, how we lead. You were saying about how we welcome somebody to our home.
Yep.
It's at the end of the day, I feel like tribes are large communities that are doing the things they do for the social impact of it, and for generational well-being and stewardship of resource. There are no shareholders. There are only stakeholders. And it is a rich way to get to work and go through life. And so many of the bad behaviors we see doubled down upon, it's because there are shareholders.
Right.
They create bad decisions. Like, there's at some point profit motive outstrips its value.
Yep.
And that's where you're seeing a lot of this backlash today. Like, how come people aren't showing up to work? Well, John Deere reports record profits, but they're not giving their employees any raises.
Right.
That is an issue.
But the execs got bonuses, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're doing $300 million in stock buyback or whatever they're doing, and the people that are putting the stuff together aren't valued in the same way as the executives.
Yeah.
So it's all these, like, these are broken systems. Call me what you want. If you're a traditionalist and you're that hardcore capitalist that thinks everything is about shareholder value and nothing else, like, you probably don't listen to the show.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I feel safe in saying, like, we assume there is a profit motive. Only healthy businesses can help people.
Right.
But when you can use your resource to create some generational well-being, I think we start scratching at that idea of where leaders are warriors.
Right.
So, thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah. So, I recently heard, and I got this quote. If you don't mind, I'd like to read it. It's from a different podcast, but
Okay, you can't read it then.
I can't. Okay, sorry.
Just kidding.
Okay, it's not from a different podcast. No. So one, I don't know if you guys ever. I can't pronounce his last name, but his first name is Balaji, Indian guy, right? Balaji S. And is on the Tim Ferriss show. And he speaks to, I think, what we're kind of talking about is how to balance all these things. And so win and help win is neither progressive nor conservative nor libertarian. Let me explain why. First, conservative, your typical conservative, and maybe it's a caricature. Maybe it's some of your listeners won't like this, but they just kind of want to stay at home. They want to do their 9 to 5. They're not as ambitious. They don't want to leave the small town. They don't want to go to the bright lights, big city, and that's not dispositionally small c conservative. Your progressive often has a zero-sum mentality. They may be ambitious, but they often believe at a very fundamental level that the rich are rich because the poor are poor, that one person's gain is another person's loss necessarily, and they feel it's a zero-sum conflict. The libertarian will say live and let live, which is a vision of Little House on the Prairie, all being by themselves, etc. Win and help win is none of those three. It's ambitious in a way that small c conservative is not. It's positive sum in a way that progressive is not. And it's collective in a way that libertarian is not. Win and help win, right? So I think that really speaks to me and what we're talking about, because when I was that kid starting on my casino career journey, I had to find a way to win, right? I was just trying to win something. And as I've won, now I help others win. That's what I want to do. I want to win and keep winning, but I also want them to win and keep winning too. So that is a good summary for me now, relevant to my mission now. And I love that. It's a simple way, and just it's all that loaded into that one little phrase: win and help win.
Right. Yeah, that's powerful. There's a lot of I'd love the history that we talk about and how it ties into how we lead. If I think about a Cherokee council house, we have 7 clans, and so when we go into council, there are 7 sections, and each clan sits in their section, and the elders for that section sit on the front row. And from the front row to the back row, we set in age order, so oldest to youngest. And then as we grow up in that system, by the time we're old enough to sit on the front row, we have the organizational intelligence and the longitudinal history of the things that have happened over our lifetime to be informed about how to lead in our tribe that day, or how to be a trusted advisor for our clan. But at no time am I going to look behind me and no one be there. Everyone I represent is behind me. And I just feel like it's an example of how tribal governance creates a different level of accountability for its leaders. You spoke to it earlier. I've got people that report to me that I also report to. So they report to me in an organizational business context, but I report to them because they are part of general council. In tribal enterprise, there's this whole idea of every time I'm representing my team, they are right behind me. And in non-tribal enterprise, those folks aren't in the room. They're not part of the conversation. The leader is isolated, and there's no one to be accountable to behind him.
Right.
So, there are certain, and that carries forward. This idea that it's difficult for me to accept that we can own something that should be a shared resource. It's difficult for me to see a world where I act alone when I'm really a representative of an entire team or community. Yep. It's difficult for me to see a world where growth mindset just isn't the way, because we are thankful for the sun we receive each day and the things that shines light upon for us to learn and go to bed a little bit wiser than we were when we woke up this morning. And the idea of legacy is to lead many days well lived, doing exactly that, learning from everything that the sun shines light upon. So, there's all these kind of rich leadership contextual components to that we get to bring to these organizations. But when you think about this idea of what is today's warrior, like 2021, like you are a representative of your tribe to everything else. But what does being a warrior mean to you?
Yeah. So in kind of the context of the tribal leadership and warrior, we were going through the notes earlier, and one word that it comes natural to me is protector, right? First and foremost, you have to protect our people. And what is my people? It's my tribe, but it's also the staff that works at the business entity that I am in charge of, or I'm a steward of. And so I want to protect them, and I want to protect the tribe, and hopefully all those interests are going in the same direction, and most of the time they are. But protector is just something that comes easy to me naturally. I'm the oldest of my siblings, right? I'm the only boy, a mama's boy at that, right? Super close to my mom, a single parent household. So leadership maybe it's just the nature of the circumstances that I grew up in, but I'm able to step into that pretty naturally. And for the most part, feel comfortable. For the most part, surely there's times where it's definitely uncomfortable. But so with that said, that role of protector or big brother or big cousin or whoever, son, that I've always been able to fulfill that and correlate that with being a protector of things. So as a general manager, protecting our resources that we've earned. We don't want to do things that jeopardize that. At the same time, you do have to take risks in business. And so it's all about, is it a calculated risk? Is that purchase really necessary for that high-tech piece of equipment, that capital expense? Do we really need that? Things like that. Trying to be frugal, but at the same time, understanding when it's really time to double down on investment that's going to make us more profitable. Protecting those jobs, right? Just like you said earlier, it's not about sometimes it's not about how can we do this most efficiently, but we still want to be effective. But at the end of the day, IGRA, or Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, is about jobs. It's about creating opportunities and more resources. And how can I get more people to share in those resources from the tribe, whether from a professional standpoint or just, like we said, in those allocations. So always trying to protect our sovereignty, right, as a tribe, to not jeopardize that. How do we become more sovereign as a tribe, a tribal entity? That's a huge one, and that's a big responsibility.
Sure.
You don't want to mess that up. So, because that does jeopardize everything, all the tribal members. So, yeah.
Oh, and this idea of kind of making a little bit of a translation in the warrior versus elder, and translating that into, let's take it to any commercial business. I think a lot of times businesses are grown on a warrior mentality. And it's going out there and doing and making the things happen and furthering and stewarding and just being active within the system. And we're able to grow something from something very small to something very large. And then the enterprise is 50 years old and it was founded by a 20-year-old young pup.
Yeah.
And now that warrior that's put this thing on their back
Right.
and made this enterprise what it is today. Well, they're no longer outfitted to be a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
They're outfitted to be an elder,
Yeah.
trusted counsel,
Advisor.
an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
They should be sitting on the front row,
Got it. Yep.
but they're still out there fighting the battles every day.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, you are the first one to introduce that concept to me. But how do you see that show up? How does it happen? What are the corrective actions that we have to jump into when we have the warrior that should be elder?
Yeah. So let me I've just been listening for this conversation, and just so our listeners know, so I'm not Native, but I have 3 sons who all are members of federally recognized tribes.
And a wife.
And a wife who is as well. She's responsible for herself. So I don't feel like I have to, coach and mentor her along quite as much. So I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, soaking it up, and just really grateful for your wisdom and experiences. But what I hear kind of in that last question about moving from warrior to elder is, in tribal enterprise, there's a cultural narrative that gives people identity to move through life. And when I see the person who should be an elder but isn't able to let go of being a warrior, which we see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't have a path to walk. The culture that they are existing within has not given them the path, the steps to continue to form their identity. And so, I mean, I've said to myself for a while, and I'm 40 years old, I want to be able to know when to transition and to do it wisely, and when to be that elder person and really release day to day to someone else. So it's a ways ahead of me, but man, I am going to be very disappointed with myself if I can't do it. But it's a challenge for me growing up culturally as a white guy. Like you don't see that transition to eldership. It's not a part of the lived experience. And so I think it's something that commercial business and wider pieces of culture can really learn from. So, and so not to just keep rambling, but like there's work to do there in creating that. Mm-hmm. And I think learning from you guys and your experience in tribal enterprise is one way that we can create those models for people.
Well, and I think that's the idea of the messages we carry forward are like anchoring to purpose, something that's clear, something that's authentic, and then here's our beliefs, here's how we carry our purpose to the world, and if we do these things, we know we're advancing it. Those things are a little more innate in a native enterprise, in a native government. Like we're there to steward the well-being of all community members, and there's no argument to that fact. It is, there's no truer truth, right?
So let me ask this. If I were going to compare and contrast this kind of journey from, adolescent to warrior to elder, 50-year path, whatever. I see that in tribal enterprise as being almost an increasing responsibility to community. Whereas when I see that in commercial enterprise, oftentimes I see the journey as being one towards individualism and individual self-sustaining existence. So the more successful I become in commercial American life, the more independent I am, the less I depend on others. And I think people would say, you know, they might be responsible for the well-being of others on some level, but it's not an innate, non-negotiable part of the role, right? If the dream is to go buy an island and live on it, that's a very different dream from someone who knows they're going to end up sitting on the front row representing and providing counsel to a community.
Well, and it doesn't carry the same level of respect when you traverse that in the non-native space. Because of the contributions made along the way and how the community stewards youth, you know, it's those beliefs and responsibilities that hold people in regard all the way through end of life. And it's why we have 3-day funerals as opposed to, you know, get them to the funeral home, get them in a casket, get them in the ground. Right. But I think thinking about that in a corporate context, it's just, I feel like you look at someone that spent 50 years in a space, let's say they're not a founder, okay? They're just someone that has been an individual contributor for 50 years. Are they held in regard by the entire organization? Or is it just like, yeah, that guy hadn't been good for 10 years, get him out of here. He's not contributing enough to the bottom line. Like if I'm a shareholder, I'm pissed he's still around.
Right.
Like different worldview. And I'm not here to say it's bad or it's good or, you know, I'm here to charge and say there's no reason why we can't build a community where the people that make contributions are held in regard, or that we bind people differently in a for-profit commercial enterprise. What do we believe? I can be the same person on Monday that I am on Sunday.
Right.
It's about what I believe, about who I'm connected with, how we take care of each other. I don't understand this transition of going to church on Sunday morning and shaking hands with everyone and hugging everybody up, and then going to share a meal together and coming back that night and doing Bible study and bringing my children, having them be with their friends, and everyone knowing everyone. And then I go to my place of business on Monday morning and I behave in this way that is exactly opposite of everything I did the day before. Because I don't know why. Because my dad and granddad told me that, or I watched those shitty 80s business movies. You know,
Wall Street.
I don't know why there's such a difference between how we behave on Monday and how we behave on Sunday. I mean, it's just a different approach to doing life on those 2 days.
Right.
For a lot of people. I know
Right.
I'm making a gross generalization, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Right. Yep.
So I have a question for you guys. Excuse me. So one of the reasons that I was really excited about this conversation is I'll just use an example kind of from pop culture right now. So there's this TV show, Res Dogs. It's on FX, Hulu. Anyone listening, totally recommend you watch it. It's great. But one of the main characters, he's probably a 15-year-old boy living in, you know, tribal housing somewhere in the middle of Oklahoma.
Right.
And he and his friends are like, we got to get a car and we're going to go to California. Like, we got to get out of here. And that's kind of the premise of what their mission is for the series.
Right.
But then he has this spirit guide show up. And the spirit guide is like, that's your mission? Like, you could fix things right here. You don't even have to leave. And the show says it much more eloquently, and there's a great story around it and all of that. But I guess my question to you guys, as folks who are wise, educated, talented, like, you've both chosen to stay engaged in your community. And I'd love to hear some of the why behind that, because you could do the metaphorical, I'm going to California and forget this mess, right? I'm going to go cash in a little bit and choose an easier path. So, like, why this path?
something I want to speak to is when you grow up with native customs, you don't know that they're native.
Right.
Just FYI.
Yeah.
Like you just think everybody does life that way.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's, how you do food or how you, just how you speak, right? It's different. So once I realized that those were differentiating things and not the way that everyone did them, I want to honor those things. They're part of my identity. And like I have two sides of my family like everyone else, right? And holding that identity and carrying on the legacy of, parents and grandparents, like that's important to me. And being here where those things happen is important to me. So there's an identity play on it, and then there's a community play in that if every Native person with those things, which thank you, by the way, you can do all my PR, if they're talented and wise and educated and all of that, if they all went to California, that's effectively, that is the second Trail of Tears. You're extracting all the talent that's needed for a community to thrive. So that's, I think, where that spiritual advisor is probably coming from. He's saying, like, look, like, we can fix the things right here. You can prop up this community just by being you, by being willing to help, by being willing to give. And yeah, there's a heavy part of I believe that dearly. I would be lying if I didn't say I have feelings of inadequacy because of where I apply that. I mean, I live in a suburb of Tulsa. Now, the good thing is I work in a lot of rural parts of Oklahoma, but I don't live in the rural parts of Oklahoma, where if I wanted a multiplier on the value of what talents I do have and what wisdom I do have, if I did it out there, it's more impactful. Because put simply, there's more of me around here than there are out there.
Right. Yep. Same. Similar lines. To me, it just makes my life more meaningful. To connect to where I'm from, right? Where my mom's from, where my grandma's from, my grandpa's. That where we're from, and that's not trying to find the bad in it. It's complicated at times, but overall it's a good thing, because we have that bond. I have that bond to these folks in my tribe. For one, we're just related, most of us, because we're so small. But on top of that, we have history, right? Extensive history. Right now, overall, we have good times, but we have had bad times. We've had trying times. And before that, my mom and my grandma had tough times. Before that, they came from Nebraska, right? They had tough times just to get here. And so did every other tribe that's in Oklahoma, right? They're not from here, from somewhere else. We're forced here. So that's the bond I have with my tribe. That's why it's meaningful for me, because we have all those shared experiences, even through our genetics, right? So
I think there's a sense of pride with like living in the heart of Indian country, and being native, right? There's a different context to that as opposed to living in California, but my tribe and my community is all the way back here.
Right. Yeah, it's tough because it's hard to remain tied into the needs of the community, and I still want to be a part of that community. I'm sure, like Chris said, we could go a part of another community, but those bonds are certainly looser, right? They're not as strong where we came from. And for me personally, I see a lot of myself in other youth or elders in the community, or elders or things that I want to get to or things that I've come from, and I see those same struggles or you see that kid that just needs a little bit of guidance, and you want to be able to say a nice word to him or something, or give him a pat on the back, or, and they look like me and we're similar, went to the same school and stuff like that. So that stuff's meaningful for me.
Yeah.
Okay, last question for me. We've talked a lot about shared values, whether we've used that language or not, the shared vision for what does it mean to be a leader in tribal enterprise, and what does the tribe value? And I'm kind of curious, how do you balance your individual leadership style and kind of your individual leadership, calling, if you want to use those words, with what's expected from your community? And how do you know when to differentiate? And I'm sure that's a difficult balance from time to time.
I like to hide behind profit. Just FYI. No, I think there are those things where, hey, guess what? We run a business, and we've got to show up on time.
Right.
And we've got to make the contributions, and we've got to do the things that are required to make this business successful. Mm-hmm. So I get to have my own identity and style and brand as to how I approach the business. Mm-hmm. But I embrace different spiritual teachings, right, from different tribes, whether it's the Cherokee going to water or the story of the first Sundance with the Seneca Cayuga. I'm trying to draw from multiple, tribal inputs and native beliefs to inform my own belief, which is easily aligned. Mm-hmm. So there's the business belief system, and there's the community belief systems, which are my inputs anyway. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm not changing who I am or what I believe. And if you want to talk about the difference between the moral fibers in the Bible and the moral fibers within the Seneca story and the moral fibers within the Cherokee story, well, guess what, folks? They're the same moral fibers. Mm-hmm. So I'm not augmenting my belief based on this data. I'm looking at it and saying, this is what I believe anyway. Mm-hmm. And I'm being ruthless about what I believe about community. Mm-hmm. I believe that if we establish a community with a shared purpose where we are encouraging each other and sharing resource, we can have a wildly successful business, and business actually starts to break down when we start restricting resource, when we get rid of all the middle managers because a spreadsheet said so, when I'm not providing development activity or support for the people on a career journey because a spreadsheet said so. Like, no, when I can build a real community providing real opportunity, fully embrace what development is all about, I can have a wildly successful business measured by any spreadsheet on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. It works one way with no bounds, and it constrains going outside in.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, personally, I think the question was, how do we balance the individual with the community? Is that kind of along lines? So, I'll speak just from my personal standpoint and I've only learned this recently in the past couple of years. And like I said, yes, we have a small tribe, but it's still 3,500 minds with 3,500 different opinions, right, of how I should do my job. Mm-hmm. And there's no way I can listen to all of them. And there's no way I can please all of them. And I think I tried at first, especially when I first met Chris, I was trying. It's impossible. So what I've learned in the last few years is, how do I remain authentic to myself as an individual is I kind of have my own personal board of directors, right? And Chris is on that board. He may not know it. He knows it now. And what I say by that is there are people that I listen to, and there's people I don't. And the people that are on my board, my personal board, and those are who I listen to, because I can't listen to everyone. And I know Chris has a similar mission that I have, right? Similar backgrounds, being tribal, right? And he has responsibilities and obligations to his tribe and things that he wants to see his tribe do. And so do I. And they're about the same thing. His tribe's a lot bigger, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And so how I balance all that is, I can't listen to 3,500 of them, but maybe I can listen to 10 of them, and I select them, and I listen, and I value everyone's opinion, but I value these maybe a little higher, and I listen a little closer, and maybe I go to them more with more questions, and that's what it's been about for me in the past couple of years, is getting that circle even smaller. Because if I have the right people on that board, then I'm going to be all right. Because they're not malicious people. They're looking out for the tribe as well. But again, you just can't please everyone. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's how I balance it all. Is by caring what they think about me. Because I can't care what everyone thinks about me, because I'm not for everyone. My style of leadership isn't for everyone. Mm-hmm. The standards I want to hold people to and expectations isn't for everyone. It can't be. It won't be. It never will be. And that's okay. Doesn't mean we have to dislike each other. It doesn't mean I hate them or I don't value them as a person. It just means I have to find a filter and a boundary somewhere to maintain my identity. And that's how I do it with that, is by really valuing the people in my life, and I value their opinion, and I listen to them. And if they think I'm doing good, more than likely I'm doing good, more than likely, or what I'm supposed to do.
Nice. Well, Luke, I think so much of today was about inviting everyone to the table.
Yeah.
To hear about, the scale of Native enterprise, the purpose of Native enterprise, some of the dynamics of being a warrior within your own tribe, that protector, and some of the dynamics that exist when you are a person of the tribe, working for the tribe, developing other people of the tribe. Mm-hmm. I think it's been a really rich conversation, but Luke, I'm interested in your final words as we exit the show today.
Yeah, so we talk about this kind of stakeholder value-driven organization instead of shareholder quite a bit. We use purpose as a big tool to do that. And there are other commercial models and thought leaders that do that, right? Gary Hamel comes to mind. He's got some great articles around kind of stakeholder-led and owned organizations and some models there. But a lot of the feedback that we get, and even the obstacles we have to overcome when we're coaching folks, is, okay, well, yes, these stakeholder focused practices, okay, how far can I push them? And it's like the further they push them, the harder it's going to be, right? And so we're saying, okay, well, a win is just to do this next thing next, and we're going to take baby steps. My takeaway is that I want people listening to hear that you can actually flip it completely on its head and have an organization where, Brian, as the senior leader, is accountable to a frontline employee. He feels responsible to them in a very real, systemic way. Mm-hmm. That's not just, I feel responsibility. No, mm-hmm. They could hold me accountable. Like I'm accountable to their success to some degree, even financially, mm-hmm. and that it can still be a successful enterprise. And so, I don't know, for folks out there listening, I hope that there's some sort of, takeaway, connection that people made, expanding of the imagination around what does it look like to lead in a way that, values community. And like you said earlier, it's not a right or wrong, mm-hmm. but just to have a vision, right? Know that there are options out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Brian, anything we can take with us as we exit the space here today?
Big takeaways? There's a lot. Every time I meet with you guys, my takeaways come a few days later.
Gotcha.
Because we get so deep in the conversations for me.
Well, give us something that you might see translates well, like something that's really core to your leadership style that you think, and if more commercial businesses valued this thing, we'd see a lot more effectiveness from leaders in that space.
Mm-hmm. It would be it's what you guys already do. It's what you guys are already about. You guys already understand this. You know this, but it is about, we talk about it, the enlightened hospitality. I think Danny Meyer calls it that, and it's essentially you truly, really do serve your front line, your staff. You serve that housekeeper. And before I met you, I might, like Luke said, might have paid lip service, but like as 3 or 4 years later, I could literally sit down and tell the housekeeper, like, I work for you. What do you need to be successful in this position? But not only that, anything. Mm-hmm. How do you need to be a better mom? Mm-hmm. How can I help you there? And you just have to care. And it has to be genuine. There's no way to you can fake it, I guess, but until you truly do it, you'll understand it. And I really believe that. I work for my employees. I work for my tribe. So
yeah, and I think that's a great thing to wrap with. Until the senior leader cares about the lives and the success and the well-being of everyone in the building, in at least to the level of their own, you'll always be looking for guest service training.
Right.
The minute the senior leader cares for everyone in that organization the same way they care about themselves, you don't need that anymore.
Right.
So I'm going to take that with me. Well, Brian, I know in addition to being a gaming hospitality leader, you have some side hustle out there. You're always good to talk to, whether we're looking for a coach or just want to connect and talk business with someone. How do people get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. But I also have a Etsy shop, and it's Sovereignly is the name of the shop. SOVERNLY. Sovereignly is the name.
So. Awesome. Well, check his stuff out online. Connect with him if you want just a high quality connection and a very rich conversation. And until next time, thank you guys, and we'll see you again on Magic in the Room.
Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Bratteroo and Luke Freeman, and produced by Ben West. Theme music is by Evan Grimm. Title track Fake Love available on Apple Music, and this podcast was recorded at Storycatcher Studio with video and audio editing and production support by Brad O'Hara and Alicia Crum, with inspiration, strategy and technical support by yours truly, Neil Hughes. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and remember, previous episodes are available at magicintheroom.com.